Okay, how's it going, everybody? I hope you're all doing well out there. Okay, well, so in today's episode, I thought I'd try to say something about a prevailing trend, or at least it's a trend that's been noticed by a few philosophers throughout the last century, and that is the disappearance of what we might call mystery. Or to put it another way, maybe, on the prevailing worship of technique and its assumed ability to deal with all of life's experiences. Okay, well, that probably sounds like a bit of a mouthful, and so not very clear. So let me try to explain by starting with the philosopher William Barrett. So Barrett wrote a book published in the late 1970s called The Illusion of Technique. And in it, he says some really interesting things. Specifically, he says some interesting things about the form that our thinking is taking today. Basically, what he argues is that we are increasingly adopting a more and more technical way of thinking or of approaching the world. And what he means by that is that we tend to approach things thinking that there's a technique for everything. That is, that there's a set of rules for everything. That there's a way to control for and manipulate and solve all problems in much the same way as there is for, say, putting together an IKEA table or fixing the engine in your car. In other words, because we have come to believe so much in technique, there's a sense of the ideal of completeness or ultimate solvability that governs our approach to everything. We can find the solution to all problems, and with the greatest efficiency, we just have to find the right technique. We just have to be skilled technicians. As Barrett himself says, he says, you just have to find the right method and definite procedure, and all the problems of life will inevitably yield before it. Okay, but for Barrett, the ultimate upshot of this is that there are increasingly less enigmas, less mysteries out there for us to experience. Nothing is open-ended anymore. No, when our main contact with the environment is one mediated by instrumentalist ways of thinking and by the hegemony of technique, then the enigmatic and the ambiguous is no longer tolerated, and as a result, life gets truncated. Now, if that wasn't very clear, let's turn to an example or two, one that Barrett, in fact, uses. So what he talks about is how the market today is flooded with how-to manuals. And one such group of manuals is particularly revealing. It has to do with all those books that allege to teach us how to make love properly and successfully. So, in other words, there's a technique to lovemaking, and in fact, to love more generally. There is a set of rules and a correct procedure for all of this. So, why settle for messiness and ambiguity in love when that can be corrected for and eliminated, when all problems in love can be solved with the right technique? Actually, speaking of this assurance of solving problems, there's another philosopher that I think is pretty relevant here when it comes to Barrett's outlook and concern. And that is the little-known French philosopher Gabriel Marcel. So, the two concepts that he often uses are these. First, there's what he calls the problem, and then there's what he calls the mystery. Okay, so what does he mean by these two things? Well, without going into too much detail, basically he takes these two things to be two ways of approaching the world. So, first, to approach things from the realm of the problematic is to see something as a problem. Is to see something as a problem with an eye to finding its solution. A solution that is, in principle, discoverable by anyone given that they follow the right procedure. It's essentially to approach something in an impersonal, and scientific way. Okay, but what about the way of the mystery? Well, that's different. And really, it's the opposite of the problematic. When you're in the realm of the mystery, whatever you're faced with or experiencing, that's something that's not susceptible to the technical and to the measurable. It's not something that you can dispassionately stand back from and figure out the solution to. It's not something characterized by the objective. Like, for example, whatever the facts about your engine happen to be when your car won't start in the morning. No, for mystery, what's going on is that you are yourself implicated in that experience and unique to it. And so it's not something that's solvable in the same way as things are in the realm of the problematic. Okay, so let's take love again. So love for Marcel is definitely not a problem. It doesn't involve a mechanistic way of thinking. It's not something to be explained and reduced and solved. It's not something that needs to be followed by some universal procedure or set of rules to succeed. It's not something that, if approached correctly, promises completion or some kind of finality. No expert technician can come in to assist and critique, like a car mechanic might in helping someone who's trying to fix their engine. No, love for Marcel is something to be experienced and lived and absorbed, and something that incites wonder and awe and open-endedness and ambiguity. It's something that requires you to go beyond the abstract and the technical, and so beyond the predictable aspects of it. Only when you do this do you enter the realm of mystery that love shares in. Again, let me repeat that because it's important. You must go beyond the technical to reach love. Despite all the marketing promises out there, rules and top 10 lists and techniques will simply not take you higher. There is a breadth of being that simply cannot be accessed through the realm of the problematic or the technical. In other words, there are certain experiences, certain domains of being that techniques actually close you off from. Or to put all this slightly differently, when in love you treat another person as a problem to be solved, what you're doing is you're depersonalizing the situation. You're creating a division between you, the subject, and the other person, the object. A process of abstraction and reduction that ultimately takes you further and further away from its mystery. Now, all this is not to say that for Marcel, the realm of the problematical or technical isn't important. It absolutely is. I mean, there is an enormously important place for the investigations of, say, the doctor and the scientist and the engineer. Such domains of knowledge they're necessary for human existence. And Marcel doesn't deny that. And no one in their right mind should. But the concern, though, for Marcel is this. It's when techniques transgress their boundaries and try to reduce the mysteries of life to problems. This is something that he thought was happening more and more, and he called it something. He called it the broken world. Anyway, when this happens, when we reduce all mysteries to problems, when we fit everything under the paradigm of the problematic, what we're doing is we're choking off any potentiality for transcendence. Or at least what happens is that the breadth and experience of life tends to get severely diminished. I mean, if this isn't quite clear, maybe another way of coming at the spirit of some of this is by looking at our emphasis on something like speed and efficiency today, which you might say are really just properties of the problematic and technical. So it seems like today speed has become something like an end in itself and no longer a means. That's to say, we seem to value speed for its own sake. Everything has to function as quickly as possible, period. But again, aren't we losing out on something important here? In our idolatry of speed and efficiency, aren't we losing out on noticing what's around us? Aren't we being a bit like a car enthusiast who exalts in driving the fastest cars, but at the expense of losing out on what passes him by on the road? In this sense, you might say that what the worship of speed often does is it mitigates against the recognition of quality or sense of the sacred. Or to put it another way maybe, it's actually only by occasionally slowing down that what's really important or sacred is allowed to reveal itself to us. As Marcel noted, this is something that every old pilgrim or traveler knew very well. They knew that it was actually the very slowness of their progress, of their journey, that was crucial, because that opened up to them a feeling of veneration for things. But by speeding up, the space and the availability of the sacred attenuates. So again, something like this is what Marcel means when he says that when we reduce mysteries to problems, we choke off any sort of transcendence or depth of experience that's associated with mystery. Actually, for him, he might say that what's really going on is that there's an element of something like grace that lies at the heart of love, and what's more, that's occasioned by slowing down. And let's not forget, if anything lies at the opposite pole of the technical, it's grace. Bye for now.